You invest $500 a month. Every single month, like clockwork, it vanishes from your bank account and flows into your investment portfolio. For the first year, you check it constantly, excited. Then, the second year, you check it a little less. By the fifth year, you barely look. It feels like you're running a marathon with no finish line, just pouring money into a hole that barely seems to grow. Meanwhile, you see friends buying new cars, taking lavish trips, or maybe getting lucky on some speculative stock that went to the moon. And you look at your account. Sure, it's grown, but not in a life-changing way. It feels slow. It feels pointless. You're ready to quit. You start thinking, maybe this whole slow and steady thing is a scam. But what if you're quitting at the exact moment the entire game is about to change? What if you're standing on the edge of a financial explosion and you don't even realize it? Most people will never experience the true power of building wealth, not because they can't, but because nobody ever showed them the hidden tipping point, the precise moment that the slow, frustrating grind transforms into an unstoppable wealth generating machine. This video reveals that moment. We're going to follow the story of a regular guy named Alex, and through his journey, you'll see why the hardest part of building wealth is also the part that comes right before the magic happens. Alex started his journey at 25. He wasn't a finance bro or a trust fund kid. He was just a regular guy with a regular job who decided to do the one thing every personal finance book preaches: invest consistently. He set up an automatic transfer of $500 every single month into a simple, low-cost index fund that tracks the S&P 500. He was promised the power of compounding, what some have called the eighth wonder of the world. He was told that over the long run, the market delivers powerful returns. Historically, the S&P 500 has averaged about 10% annually. To be conservative, Alex figured he'd be happy with a 7% return after you account for inflation. He was ready to get wealthy. What he wasn't ready for was the soul-crushing silence of the first decade. Let's be brutally honest about the beginning of any investing journey. It feels awful. By the time Alex was almost 27, after nearly 2 years of diligently saving, he finally crossed his first milestone: $10,000. He had saved for 22 months. That's 22 times he said no to something else to make that $500 payment. In total, he had personally contributed $11,000. His magical compounded gains after a couple of bumpy years in the market. He'd actually lost money, and his account sat at just over $10,000. He had done all the work. The market had barely lifted a finger. He looked at his phone, the app displaying that five-figure number for the first time. It didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a receipt for his sacrifice. A few days later, he's at a friend's barbecue. One of his buddies, Mark, pulls up in a brand new luxury car. How? A quick flip, he called it, on some crypto coin that had a good week. Mark made more in 3 days than Alex's entire portfolio was worth. The conversation was intoxicating. Everyone talking about 10 baggers and getting in early. And there was Alex with his boring, sensible index fund. He went home that night and the doubt began to creep in. What am I even doing? He thought. This is a joke. The promise of future wealth felt like a distant fairy tale, while the reality of his friend's new car was parked right there, gleaming under the streetlights. This feeling is the first great filter. It's where the path forks. One road is marked "Get Rich Quick," and it's crowded with people chasing lottery tickets. The other is "Get Rich for Sure," and it's long, quiet, and looks like it goes nowhere. Alex was on that lonely road, and he couldn't see more than 10 feet ahead. We think, if we're not seeing huge, exciting numbers right away, we're failing. But the market doesn't operate on our timeline. It operates on the timeline of compounding. Alex thought he was failing, but he wasn't. He was just in the dark, painstakingly building the foundation of a skyscraper, with no idea of the tower it would one day become. Alex didn't quit. He grumbled, but he let the automatic transfers roll as the years blurred. Life happened. A marriage, a mortgage, a child. Each event brought new financial pressures, and that $500 a month shifted from a simple sacrifice to a heavy anchor. Sticking to the plan became an act of sheer, stubborn faith. Fast forward to age 39. After 14 and a half years of investing through crashes and bull runs, Alex finally hit his first major milestone, $100,000. But the numbers were brutal. His contributions totaled a staggering $87,000. His compounded gains were just $13,000. He had poured almost $90,000 of his own money into the machine, and it had only produced $13,000 in return. He was still doing almost all the work. For every $6 he put in, his portfolio grudgingly added one. It felt inefficient. It felt wrong. This long journey to the first $100,000 is the valley of despair. It's the point where the reward feels so small for the effort that you start to believe the system is broken, scammed by the gurus and their pretty charts. The market is indifferent to your urgency. It only cares about how much money is in the account and how much time it has. During this invisible grind, Alex wasn't just saving money, he was accumulating time, adding unseen tension to the catapult with every payment. If you're in your 30s, with $40,000, $60,000, or even $80,000 saved and feel like you're failing, you're not. You are in the valley of despair, doing the hardest part of the entire journey. Alex didn't know it, but at $100,000, he was about to begin an ascent he couldn't yet imagine. If you've ever felt that frustration, that slow grind, take a second to subscribe. We're here to demystify these long-term processes and show you that what you're feeling isn't failure. It's just a forgotten step on the map to wealth. The next decade for Alex was more of the same, but now with a deep sense of fatigue. He was in his 40s, a mid-career professional with more responsibilities than ever. The idea of being wealthy felt like a young man's dream. Now, he was just trying to pay the bills and save for his kids' college. The $500 a month continued, more out of habit than anything else. At age 48, he had a particularly tough year. A big, unexpected expense hit the family, and stopping the investments became a serious conversation. "What are we even doing this for?" he asked his wife one night. "We've been at this for over 20 years. I'm almost 50. I'm not rich. Maybe we should just use that money now. Enjoy our lives a little." He was more tempted to quit than he'd ever been. Out of frustration and morbid curiosity, he logged into his investment account. He braced for disappointment. The number on the screen read around $220,000. It was a lot of money, sure, but it had taken him 23 years. He'd personally deposited $138,000 of that. He sighed. The machine was still so inefficient. But then, the year turned over. Alex turned 49. He kept the investment going, deciding to give it just one more year. He contributed his usual $6,000. The market did what the market does. At the end of that year, Alex logged in again. He expected to see his balance go up by maybe $7,000 or $8,000. Instead, the number he saw made him lean closer to the screen. Let's break down the math of that single, transformative year. His portfolio started with about $234,000. A 7% return on that is approximately $16,400. That year, his own contribution, his sweat and sacrifice, was $6,000. For the first time in his entire 24-year journey, the roles had reversed. The market had just paid him more than he had paid it. In fact, it had paid him nearly 3 times more. This is it. This is the tipping point. It's not a date on a calendar or a specific age. It's the crossover moment when the growth from your investments surpasses the new money you put in. Before this, Alex was the engine of his wealth. His savings were the big logs he threw on a tiny fire. After this, the fire itself was a roaring bonfire, and his contributions were just kindling. A profound realization washed over him. All those years of doubt and boredom, it was all for this. The game had changed. He was no longer just a saver. He was an investor, an owner of a capital machine that was working for him day and night. The growth was no longer a straight line. It was a curve, and it was starting to bend upwards, fast. The irony is that this moment of explosive change only arrives after 2 decades of seemingly invisible progress, right when you're most tempted to give up. After the tipping point, everything changes. The psychology shifts from one of discipline to one of awe. Checking his portfolio was no longer a source of anxiety, it became a source of fascination. The numbers began to move in ways that would have shocked his 25-year-old self. Look at the acceleration. It took Alex 14 and a half years to save his first $100,000, his second $100,000, roughly 8 years, the third, just over 5 years, the fourth, under 4. The growth was feeding on itself, the curve of his wealth bending sharply upwards, finally looking like that hockey stick graph he was promised all those years ago. By the time Alex was 57, just 8 years after his tipping point, his portfolio sailed past $500,000. Let's pause there. He had been investing for 32 years. His total contributions were $192,000. His compounded gains were over $300,000. The balance had tipped for good. The machine had officially contributed more to his wealth than he had. He was no longer the majority shareholder in his own financial future. Compound interest was. This is where the analogy of the Chinese bamboo tree is so perfect. When you plant the seed, you water it for 5 years and see nothing. It looks like all your effort is for naught. But underground, it's growing a massive root system. Then, in its 5th year, it explodes, shooting up 90 feet in just 6 weeks. Did the tree grow 90 feet in 6 weeks? No. It grew for 5 years and 6 weeks. Alex had spent over 2 decades building the root system for his wealth. The crossover point was the moment his bamboo shoot finally broke through the ground. The acceleration from here is breathtaking. At age 67, after 42 years of consistent, boring investing, Alex's portfolio crossed the $1 million mark. Of that million, his own contributions were just $252,000. The machine, the quiet power of compounding, had generated nearly $750,000 all by itself. The last 10 years of his journey created more wealth than the first 30 years combined. The magic wasn't in the beginning, it was all loaded at the end. The story of Alex is the story of every successful long-term investor. It's a journey defined not by a single moment of genius, but by decades of resilience. He felt the temptation to quit. He felt the sting of watching others get rich quick. He suffered through the soul-crushing boredom of the invisible grind. He nearly gave up right before the magic happened. His journey reveals a fundamental truth. Building wealth is not a straight line. For years, it feels like nothing is happening. Then, suddenly, it feels like everything is happening at once. The crossover point is that critical moment. For Alex, it happened around age 49, when his portfolio's growth finally outpaced his own contributions. This is when your money starts working harder than you do. The problem is that this moment is often buried 2 decades into the journey. Most people quit in year 5, or 10, or 15, stuck in the valley of despair, convinced they've wasted their time. They sell their bamboo seeds after 4 years because they haven't seen a sprout. So if you are investing right now and it feels slow, and you're wondering if you're doing it wrong, ask yourself a different question. Instead of asking, why isn't it growing faster? Ask, how deep are my roots? Every dollar you invest, every month you stay the course, you are building a foundation you cannot see. You are turning the winch. You are preparing the soil. You are so much closer to your tipping point than you think. The exact moment compounding becomes a wealth machine isn't in a stock chart. It's the moment you decide to stay consistent when it feels pointless. It's the moment you choose patience when the world is screaming for speed. Don't quit before the machine turns on. Keep building your roots. The explosion is coming.